I know you heard me on the radio flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K. I know you heard me on the radio flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K.
Scarlet Nation, welcome to another episode of Night Watch with your host Larry K. I just wanted to briefly touch base. We had the Cam Spencer issue, which I reported on, or actually just discussed only a few weeks ago. We did get good news, and I didn't get a chance to get on and talk to you guys about Cliff coming back. Cliff coming back was a big deal. There was a lot of speculation out there that Cliff may well keep his name in the draft, especially if he had the potential to be drafted and sign a two-way deal that placed him in the G League, giving him significantly more earning power than people that just play in the G League straight without the two-way deal with an NBA team. Nonetheless, that didn't happen, despite the fact that this may kind of be a bit of a rebuilding year, and I'll talk about that in a second. Cliff did come back, and it's very welcome news. Without Big Cliff in the center there, I think we'd really have a gaping missing piece in this roster and in this lineup. So Cliff coming back is huge. I think, he may take another step up this year, and if he can be dominant in more ways than one, we might, kind of have a better year than some people even expect, which would be great. But today we did get the news, the unfortunate and somewhat unexpected news, that Paul Mulcahy is not going to come back to Rutgers. Paul Mulcahy has played his last game at Rutgers, and Paul is going to enter the transfer portal. Now, initially, if people really think back, I think some may find this as a shock, and not a shock this morning, because there was a little bit of rumors and whispers, in the last day or two that Paul may be leaning towards not coming back, or that he may not be coming back. I think, as far as a week ago, there was some speculation that it wasn't a done deal, that he was back, although I still think most people expected Paul back. But if you think back to the end of last season, there was a lot more speculation and a lot more sentiments out there that Paul would not be returning to Rutgers. Just the way he was emotional in the end of season press conference, the way the season had kind of unfolded, the way things went down, the way the team was starting to be structured going forward. I think there was some speculation at the end of last year that Paul may well not be back. And then it seemed to kind of shift, as we got a couple months into the offseason, a month or two in, it started to shift with some insiders saying, no, it looks like Paul's probably coming back. All directions are pointing that way, et cetera, et cetera. So it came as a bit of a surprise that Paul's leaving. Paul has gotten NIL stuff done with Rutgers. He actually won an award recently. I don't know if you saw that, for being able to leverage his NIL to do charitable work. And Paul is one of the most charitable players that we have. It's going to be a big loss to New Jersey and the New Brunswick area for him to be gone a year. He's leaving donating meals correlated to the number of assists he had. He did have a classy message that he put up today that he was leaving. So let's talk about two things, though. Let's talk about, A, him leaving, why, what it could be, etc., and then B, how it impacts the team going forward. First of all, him leaving, there's some reporting out there. I know Richie Schneiderite of The Night Report, great podcast, by the way, great content, great board. And Aaron Brightman, another great Rutgers personality here, has kind of hinted at it based on his perspective. Perhaps part of the reason Paul is leaving is the way last year unfolded. Paul got a lot of criticism from the fan base. He also got a little criticism from other fan bases. Like Indiana heckled him online so viciously that Paul deleted his social media, honestly. And Indiana fans, they heckle this channel. They're all over the place. There's a lot of them, and they're like a massive fan base online, which is an interesting bunch. So hi out there, Hoosiers, if you're out there. But I think, that's an interesting perspective, right? Did Paul leave because of fan sentiments or because he felt he wasn't treated fairly by the fan base? Here's my take on it. Number one, if you recall, now first of all, I'll say this. I'm a big, I'll tell you my sentiments on the whole Paul leaving thing in a minute. I was critical of Paul the end of last year. And the record speaks for itself. It's on here as a video record. I thought that in some of those last couple games, and one game in particular, I thought Paul, compared to his ability, compared to what is expected of him, compared to what we've seen him do, he had some pretty rough games at the end. And I don't think that any fan should apologize for being rightfully critical of a rough performance. We all have rough performances in our chosen professions, right? I misspelled the intro to this video, and people let me know about it, and it's inexcusable that I misspelled it. And it's even more inexcusable that I left it up for so long, but it's hard to edit those intros, and, it took me time, whatever, and so I have to redo it, fine. I'm an attorney, and I've had one trial in particular haunts me to this day because there was a poor performance on my part, not in court per se, but the way I strategically went about it, and it still haunts me, and I rightfully deserve some criticism because I could do better. So Paul getting criticism from fans, that's part of life. It's a big stage. It's a big-time college atmosphere, and there's going to be criticism when you're not playing well. But to be completely honest, though, Paul put the team on his shoulders against Michigan State at the Garden last year. Paul put this team on his shoulders 2 years ago when we went on the streak beating 4 ranked teams to keep ourselves relevant and to get into the tournament. So Paul did a lot of really great things for Rutgers and for the community, but I also don't think it's above criticism. And here's where I stand, and it's just pure speculation. Sometimes you just need a change of scenery. Sometimes the good feelings and the good vibes and, the emotion is just trending in the wrong way. And I thought last year we caught somewhat of a glimpse of the fact that maybe things were just not, the vibe was just off with Paul towards the end of the year, with the fans, with Paul himself, with the structure of the team. There were times when it seemed like Paul was hitting the bench late in the year. And you had, Derek Simpson coming in, taking a lot of minutes and kind of putting the team on his shoulders at times, even though he was a freshman. I think the way we started to play against some teams with certain, aspects of speed and the style of play didn't always mesh with what Paul was doing. And I think maybe a change of scenery could just be beneficial to Paul in his last year playing collegiate basketball. And I can't fault him for wanting to change scenery. And, that's part of the game. It's part of what happens. I was an emotional player as a kid, and I never played high-level ball, but I was an emotional person, too, as a young man. And as time, wear my heart on my sleeve. I still do sometimes. And as time goes on, you learn to kind of manage that as best you can. I'm not saying that as a criticism of Paul, but Paul wears his heart on his sleeve. He wears his heart on his sleeve. And, some Irish kids from Jersey do that. I'm one of them. So, it's just the way things went down last year. I could understand why he wants a change of scenery. Now, some people are mad because, this is late in the game. Pike is not going to be able to necessarily replace him in the portal because the portal's closed, aside from grad transfers. And people are saying, look, Paul waited too long. He left us high and dry. But here's why I think this is a little different than Cam. Cam Spencer, never said a word, was tight-lipped, acted as if it was 100% certain that he was coming back. There were no indications otherwise. Waited until the portal closed and grad transfers were in high demand, thus commanding higher value in dollars, and completely blindsided the staff and just left and didn't even give him a chance to match, and it was NIL-driven. It was money-driven. Paul Mulcahy played his entire undergraduate college career at Rutgers University, chose to stay home, was part of a legacy with other players like Ron Harper Jr., Geo Baker, Caleb McConnell, Miles and Cliff and these other guys. And he played his heart out. He was represented and walked at senior day. And now he's a graduate student. He's entitled to do a graduate year somewhere. And he's choosing to do that. And so I don't feel any hostility, any criticism, or anything towards Paul Mulcahy right now. I don't know why, but I just don't. Miles went to UCLA for his, grad year. And I know he wasn't from Jersey originally, but just because Paul's from Jersey doesn't mean he can't explore that option. His going away message was gracious, and Paul never gave the indication that he was 100% coming back, so I don't think he left Pike high and dry. I think Pike knew there was always a possibility Paul wouldn't come back, and I think, quite frankly, I don't know this, but I'm guessing Paul probably struggled back and forth with whether or not he was going to come back because of his loyalty to Pike, because of his loyalty to the state, because of his love for the school. But ultimately, I think he made a decision that's best for him. I think in here he's commanding six figures in NIL. Good for him. He's earned that. And wherever he goes, I hope it's not a Big Ten school, because you go to a Big Ten school and you come into the RAC, or we go to play you, and you're playing for a Big Ten school, and if we have a rougher year, or a year where we're not at our pinnacle, and whatever school Paul goes to makes a tournament run, I think that somewhat kind of, I don't want to say diminishes, because you can't diminish his legacy here. You can't diminish it. But I think that somewhat kind of changes the perception and the way we view it, because now he's got this other legacy at a Big Ten rival school that kind of clouds the legacy he has at Rutgers a little bit, complicates it, to say the least. So I hope Paul goes somewhere that's not a Big Ten school. And I know there is at least one Big Ten school in the mix, and I'm really hoping that he doesn't wind up going to a Big Ten school. I hope he goes anywhere else but a Big Ten school. And if he goes anywhere else but a Big Ten school, I wish him excellent success on the court. I wish him success in life regardless. And make no mistake, Paul Mulcahy is still a young man, and Paul Mulcahy's still playing ball. But in 10 years, 5 years, Paul Mulcahy comes back to the RAC, Paul Mulcahy's going to get a standing ovation. Okay? Just like when Miles came back, just like when a lot of these guys come back. He's going to get a standing ovation. He's still part of the Rutgers family. He's still a Rutgers alum. And who knows where the future is going to lead for him, and how involved he is going to be in New Jersey and in Rutgers and etc. So you can't have any animosity. You can't say he ruined his legacy. You can't say any of that nonsense. I mean, it's just silly. It's melodramatic. So look, I understand why he might have left. Quite frankly, the team is kind of going through a rebuilding year now, and I'll talk about that in a second. And the team, the way it's playing, based on the recruits we have coming in, is going to change styles. It's going to be a different look. It's just going to be a different program in some ways. And so when Paul already had the team on his shoulders last year, and it really didn't work out towards the end of the year on the court, why would he necessarily want to come back in his last year of eligibility and do that again in the midst of a changing program, in the midst of a changing roster, when he really isn't feeling that enthusiasm and love with the environment the way he was maybe a couple years ago? So I understand why he might want to leave, and I don't fault him for it. And I would love to have Paul back. But speaking of the team this year, we certainly need Paul. We certainly could have used him. He's an experienced, very talented, upper tier Big Ten player. But look, the future is now, basically. You got Cliff, who, for all intents and purposes, started playing basketball late. So even though this probably is assuredly Cliff's last year, although he has 1 year of eligibility after that, I doubt he comes back. But Cliff's still coming into his own as a young player, and he's an interesting player for a center. He's not one of these traditional super bulky centers. He's somebody who, if he can get his shot working a little bit, he can do more things. And then you have Gavin Griffiths coming in, who's a completely different player than we've really had in this program since Pike's been here. Brings a whole nother element with his shooting and his height and whatnot. And you have Simpson, who's got another year in the program. You got Noah Fernandez, who's coming in, who is talented, can score points, can bring the ball up. Mawat Mag is going to come back at some point, even if it's later in the beginning of the season, hopefully by December. And so you don't have... Look, 2 months ago, we think we have Cam Spencer and we think we have Paul Mulcahy on this roster, and our expectations for this team next year are considerably different than they are now. Just like our expectations from last year were what they were, and that's why the end of the season was so disappointing for so many. This year you have to adjust your expectations. This year you have to kind of ride with the highs and just power through the lows, because I don't know that this, and I'm not doubting the team. I'm not doubting Peichel. I'm not casting aspersions. I'm a season ticket holder. I re-upped. But you have to expect that this is not that kind of year where you go in with the sky-high expectations. This might be some growing pains this year. But if we can maintain respectability and we can lock down at home and play well, and we could, I don't know, find a way to make the system work like we did last year. No one thought we could replace Gio and Ron, and it wasn't like we did. We didn't. But, we found a system that worked when we were playing at our game and before Mag went down. If we can find that kind of rhythm, you never know. Maybe we sneak into the tournament. Maybe we take another NIT bid and we have a little bit of a better showing this year. Or maybe we miss the tournament, but we're still going to have some memorable games. And then next year, all bets are off with this incoming class that's coming in for 2024. So the loss of Paul certainly affects our team. But I want you to think about the fact that if you look at the end of last year, Paul's usage, Paul's minutes, when Paul was in there, what position he was playing, when Paul was in there, what the team was doing, and there may have been some writing on the wall, so to speak, and I'm not trying in any way to infer that Paul wouldn't be a starter or he wouldn't be a primary piece of this team, because he certainly would, but there are certain things, if you look at the end of last year when Paul was kind of getting off the ball, and I actually liked Paul off the ball, so I think he would have been off the ball again. But it's interesting when Paul said he was leaving, he said it was nice being New Jersey's point guard. Maybe not having the ball in his hands, maybe not being the point guard is something, that weighed on him. I really don't know. But, if you think about the makeup of the team and you think about who we have on the roster, we're definitely going to have to bring in some other transfer guard. I don't know where we're going to get him from. But you wonder how Paul was going to fit in and whether he was good with it or not. And you wonder how the team is going to look and feel on the court with or without Paul. And so it's a huge piece, an experienced upper echelon Big Ten player who can score points. And when he's at his best, he can put the team on his back. And we've seen him do it numerous times that we're not going to have now. And that hurts no matter how you slice it. You can't sugarcoat it. You can't have too much glass half full. You just can't. You can't get around it. It's a big loss for the program. At the same time, perhaps the system with the current players we have, and perhaps the makeup of the team that way, may find a way to function and become a well-oiled machine even without Paul, given the fact that towards the end of last year, he wasn't necessarily one of the primary pieces that was functioning in the way we started to run things. So the loss of him hurts, and I think the way it affects the team is it takes somebody who could score, somebody who could put the team on his back, somebody who plays tenaciously, aggressively, who's a bigger body out of the lineup, and that hurts. But what it does is it gives us a chance to change our style a little bit and to run to the strengths of the pieces that we do have left on the team. So it's going to be interesting to see. I don't think most Rutgers basketball fans expected this offseason in terms of Cam and Paul leaving. And I think it does sting quite a bit, especially because the team has been one of the, and people could project us all they want lower, like one of the top, upper half teams in the Big Ten for the last couple of years, handful of years, really. And you've had consistency in this program. You've had guys like Paul, usually stay, because you had Ron stay, you had Gio stay, you're having Cliff stay. You're used to guys staying. You had Caleb come back for his last year. You're used to guys staying, and that maintains some level of competitive consistency where you have some faith that we're not going to backslide at all that year. And now this year you lose two very important pieces and a good amount of our scoring, and you wonder, what's this year going to be? We don't have any certainty. On the other hand, if you're a Rutgers fan, with the latest developments in recruiting and with the notoriety the program's been getting, with the way we went about the assistant coaching search, with the way we're going about NIL, you have to be encouraged about the state of the program regardless. And I'm actually more curious than, dreading this year coming up. I'm not necessarily looking at this year saying, wow, rah, rah, we're going to be great. But I'm not looking at this year as like just dreading it. I'm curious about this year. I'm curious to see these young players I'm curious to see Derek Simpson take a step. I'm curious to see Mawat Mag come back and hopefully take a step. I'm curious to see what Cliff does. What does he go out with a bang? And I'm curious to see how Gavin Griffiths comes in and what he's bringing to the table, because with an influx of more recruits next year, that's the future. And I'm curious to see how Pike handles this and what he does, because it's just fascinating to watch. So as opposed to the emotional fan that I was last year when I got on here and I was disappointed and I was talking, I don't see myself being as much like that, and unless expectations change, which they can. We can have a great beginning of the season, and then I'm going to have higher expectations. But for now, I'm going to go into this with just actual cerebral curiosity and see what happens. So at the end of the day, man, Godspeed and good luck to Paul Mulcahy. Thank you for everything you've done at Rutgers. Thank you for everything you've done, for Jersey. You're a Jersey guy and a Rutgers guy through and through. We love you. I understand that sometimes fans can be critical and players could take it a certain way, and we really don't know what goes on in that locker room. Totally understand it. But, there's really no ill will, I don't think, anywhere in the fan base. And I think most of the fan base has nothing but love for Paul Mulcahy. And I wish him nothing but the best. I hope he doesn't go to another Big Ten team. But the memories are awesome. The young man's awesome. The way he went out doesn't really bother me. I got to be honest. For some reason, it's just not bothering me that much. And I'm not saying I'm not bothered because he's leaving, because I wish he would stay. I want him to be on the team. It sucks as a fan that he's leaving, but I don't feel a negative, reaction to him leaving. He's doing what's best for him, and I think we kind of understand why, and we can all get it. Sometimes you need to change the scenery. So I'll touch base with you guys next time any big news comes through and have a discussion. If you guys have not done so yet, but you like Rutgers sports, you're a Rutgers fan, if you like sports content in general, you like Big Ten content, click subscribe. It's right here. 2 seconds right now. You could have clicked it. You could have clicked subscribe. Click subscribe. Subscribe to the channel. There's content coming out. We're going to talk football again soon. And we'll see. We got a lot to break down with football. So once August comes around, I'll be talking to you guys about that. And I can't wait to see you at the tailgates over in the Blue Lot. But hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. Click like. Tell other people about the channel. We're trying to grow. And every subscriber helps. And every subscriber gives me, more incentive and inspiration to put out more Rutgers content. Let's be honest. There's good Rutgers content, but there's not that much Rutgers content. So let's get it buzzing. Hit subscribe. Until then, man, hopefully everybody's okay from that smoke we had flood the state the other day, which was just insane. But I hope everybody has a good weekend. Enjoy the weather. Enjoy your families. Enjoy your friends. And I will talk to you very, very soon. Go RU.